Again, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today for our CARES Planning for Aging presentation. Denise did a wonderful job introducing me. My contact information is on the screen here in case you need it, as well as the information for Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I'd like to begin with our learning objectives. And Denise did a really good job outlining what the program is going to look like today. Really, this presentation is designed to help you to start thinking about your long-term care plan, to consider some options for long-term care planning and aging in place or in a care setting, and to give you some tools for developing that plan. So our objectives are as follows. 1, to define long-term care and understand the different options. 2, to identify and use different tools to plan for long-term care, or as it's abbreviated, LTC. And finally, to explore local and national resources to use in planning for aging. So I always like to start with a little bit of context. Aging in California and across the nation is changing. In California, we do have a plan. It's called the Master Plan for Aging. What we're seeing and what legislators are paying close attention to at this moment is that Californians are living longer than ever before. The average life expectancy of a Californian is 81.9 years. So it's the second highest average life expectancy in the nation. We know that a lot of people in California are aging. And in fact, by 2030, adults 60 and over will make up 30%, a third of California's population. You can see in these graphics here the distribution and how that's changing, how it looked in about 13 years ago, how it's going to look in a few decades. And so the Master Plan on Aging is really an important legislative tool for ensuring support for all Californians as they age and as they engage in long-term planning. And the Master Plan for Aging really seeks to prioritize the health and well-being of older Californians, especially since a third of the state's population, again, by 2030, will be over the age of 60. It's a blueprint for state and local government to prepare for this demographic shift. And what it entails are 5 bold goals designed to address the needs of a diverse population of aging Californians. So the goals for 2030 are housing for all stages and ages, health reimagined, inclusion and equity, not isolation, caregiving that works, and affording aging. So the Master Plan on Aging really does make this effort to look at multiple dimensions of aging and how again, how local and state government can support individuals as they are deciding how they want to age in California. And again, this is good context for us for this presentation, just because this gives us a sense of the larger work that's being done. Today's presentation will focus on what we as individuals can do and the tools that we can use. But it is vital to know that this is going to affect our state and our nation. And the more we can plan and prepare, the better. So We have a state that is a little ahead of the curve in terms of having a master plan, but planning for aging, it like as an individual, it also takes a plan. Some of the things that we need to consider as we are preparing for aging. And I just want to underscore here that it is never too early to start planning for aging. This is something that I'm thinking about right now, something that I encourage my friends to think about. We work at Del Oro with caregivers, and we encourage them to make a care plan, but then also to think about how that care plan fits within their plan for aging for the person that they're supporting, but also for our caregiver clients. So some things we need to think about: do I want to stay in my home, or what's called age in place? Okay. Or do I want to pursue assisted living? So there's kind of two different pathways before you. I kind of like to think about the game of life. If any of you have played the game of life, and at the very beginning of the game, you sort of, to strategize to win, you have to kind of come up with a plan of like what how you're going to build your wealth and your security and your family and all of that. And so it's a kind of a good analogy for thinking about planning for aging too. We have different paths set before us, and we have to decide what our preference is and plan accordingly. So for aging in place, it's really important to think about, what does my current support system look like? And by support system, I mean, what family do I have close by? What friends are available to me? Are they close geographically, or are they far away? Would they be able to support me with my preference for how to age? What will I need to do or change if I develop a chronic or debilitating condition that's going to require assistance? And what are community resources that will allow me to support to support this plan for aging in place? So again, thinking about that support system, what are the resources available and tools that you have? Who are the people in your life who could help to support you as you age at home? If you want to pursue assisted living, it's important to understand, first of all, what kind of options there are and where you might want to live. What kind of housing option would best suit you as you age, and what kind of supports might you need as you age as well? None of us has a crystal ball and can predict what kinds of diseases will develop, what kind of conditions will develop as we age. It's still a mystery, but it's always good to have some sort of a contingency plan. As we see more and more people living longer, we do know that they are more at risk of developing chronic conditions. So it's important to be mindful of that and to think about how that would fit into a plan to pursue assisted living. What kinds of supports will you need as you age? Like, what kinds of community do you thrive in, and can you be healthy and maintain good well-being? What kinds of activities and services do you need to have access to? So those are questions that you ask yourself as you're looking at these two different pathways, but both of these options require that you consider, what are your available financial resources, and are my legal affairs in order? Is there an end of life plan? We'll talk about that a little later in the program. It's not comfortable thinking about end of life, and I want to acknowledge that, but it's super important. It's important from the standpoint of planning as an individual. And just from the perspective of caregivers and families as well, knowing that a loved one has an end of life plan, it's in writing, and it's something that can be carried out is such a gift and such a powerful gift for caregivers and family members. And so if in the event that you develop a chronic condition or a degenerative disease, you have something in place so that your loved ones are not scrambling to figure out what you want when it may be too late for you to communicate that directly. So I just threw a lot of information at you. And what I want to do is step back, and we're going to watch a short video that's called "What is Long-Term Care?" It's important for us to define this term and kind of see what it looks like as we explore options and tools.
When people hear the words long-term care, they often think only of nursing homes. But long-term care includes much more.
Long-term care is a wide variety of services and supports to help meet one's personal and health care needs over an extended period of time.
The most common type of long-term care is actually personal care, services that a person receives in the home from paid or unpaid caregivers. Home-based care includes home health care, personal care, homemaker services, friendly visitor companion services, and emergency response systems.
Home-based long-term care is primarily care received in your home. It is generally care, as I just mentioned, to complete your activities of daily living. And again, that's bathing, dressing, and it also includes other activities that support you in your home. Shopping, meal preparation, getting to doctor's appointments. All of these things are home-based services.
Long-term care also includes services that are available outside the home, called community-based services. Community-based care includes adult daycare programs, senior centers, transportation services, meals programs, and respite care. Community-based care supplements services available in the home, making it easier for a person to live at home.
Community-based services are basically services that are available in the community. Generally, they supplement the services that people get and need in their homes, and they help people to stay in their homes. Community-based services include things like adult daycare services, which are service programs that provide supervision and nutrition programs.
And look up at your elbow if you can. And then slowly press down with your big toes. Lift your knee.
Other community-based services include meal programs, transportation services to help people get around, and senior centers.
Senior centers are very important in the community. They are generally for kind of well elderly or elderly that don't need supervision, but they do provide social, recreational, and nutrition programs for people in the community.
When people are no longer able to live on their own and need full-time help, they may require long-term care in a facility, such as a nursing home. Facility-based care includes adult foster care, board and care homes, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, and continuing care retirement. Facility-based care is for those who require help and can no longer live on their own.
Nursing homes provide 24-hour housing, health care and personal services, supervision 24 hours a day, and most nursing homes also provide rehab services.
To find out about long-term care services that are provided in the home, in the community, or at a facility, contact the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or visit www.eldercare.org. www.eldercare.gov. You can also contact your local area agency on aging.
So thank you for tuning in with me to this video. I really like it because it offers a comprehensive look at long-term care and really grounds us in an accurate definition. Once again, just want to underline the fact that we have these two pathways, really. We can pursue aging in place, or we can pursue assisted living, which may require different, in which case both pathways are going to require different sets of resources. So just a shameless plug, while I put this chart up on the screen, one of the reasons why the CRC system is so important when we're thinking about aging, and CRC stands for Caregiver Resource Center, is because, as the video indicated, a lot of people rely on that personal care, on that in-home care, often relying specifically on family, friends, unpaid and informal caregivers for support. So we will talk about the Oro CRC a little later. I also wanted to highlight the two resources that the video concluded with, the Elder Care Locator and the Area Agency on Aging. We'll talk about those as well. You can see on the screen here a chart that sort of breaks down what the video says, gives you an at a glance. But to age in place, maintain independence at home, that pathway kind of breaks down into a couple of different options: home-based care and community-based care. And it's not to say that you have to choose one or the other. In fact, oftentimes both of these options are ones that people leverage in order to age in place. But home-based care takes the form of that home health care, in-home care, personal care. So relying again on family, friends, informal caregivers, companionship services, and emergency response technology, for instance, medical alert bracelets. Community-based care is sort of a wraparound to the home-based care. And again, they're not mutually exclusive. Oftentimes, both of these are really necessary to age in place in a healthful way. Community-based care involves adult day programs, which are essentially programs for elder adults, oftentimes older adults with some sort of cognitive decline. And adult day programs provide structured activities and socialization, as well as congregate meals and respite for a family or an informal caregiver. Respite care. So this is another important one. Respite care can take the form of a stay in an adult day program, or it might also look like an in-home care agency sending a professional caregiver into the home to substitute for the family or informal caregiver. Senior centers are really important for health and well-being and aging in place because they offer activities, especially exercise and nutrition classes. They oftentimes have meal programs associated with them, things like Meals on Wheels. Transportation services also may fall under the umbrella of senior centers, but can also be offered outside of them as well. All of these resources in community-based care become increasingly important as we age, and we want to know about them. We want to be able to leverage them so that we can stay independent and at home if that is our preference and that is a realistic option. On the other side, facility-based care allows an individual to receive assistance with what are called activities of daily living, or ADLs for short. And you might hear me slip into that acronym. Again, ADLs is activities of daily living, things like bathing, grooming, dressing. And facility-based care looks different. There are a number of different options, including board and care homes, which are smaller facilities. Typically, they have between maybe 6 to 8 residents. It tends to be more of a home-like environment, but there are staff that provide services to those residents. Assisted living it tends to be larger. It might include independent living with amenities, or senior apartments. It might include a facility that has a continuum of care. So there's assisted living, or excuse me, the next option is continuing care retirement. So what that looks like is a campus or a facility that has independent living, assisted living, and potentially memory care all on the same campus. So depending upon wherever you are in that spectrum, or wherever your partner, your loved one is on that spectrum, there are different options for where to live within the same campus. Nursing homes or skilled nursing facilities are really designed for those who need rehabilitative services that are ordered by a doctor. In a nursing home, you're going to have 24-hour nursing care, medical monitoring and supervision, and this can be quite costly. I do want to highlight that a nursing home, as the video said, is not the same as an assisted living facility or a board and care home, right? At these places, you're not going to receive the 24-hour nursing care and medical supervision that you would in a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility. So I do want to differentiate those. And I also would say that not only is a skilled nursing facility or a nursing home more expensive, but because it tends to be a better option for short-term rehabilitative stay for most people, in that it's so costly. Okay. Just want to take a deep breath. You might be feeling overwhelmed with this information, but I want to encourage you to assemble your toolkit. So throughout the presentation, you'll see this little red Homer box. And what we're going to do is put some resources for ourselves inside this toolkit, okay? You have some of the language now for aging and long-term planning. And now let's actually look at some practical resources that we can use. So one, and I do have to say I'm a little biased here because I'm a reader and I like books and I like getting information that way. So I always want to offer some literature as a resource. There are 3 books that I'd recommend reading, and this is not a paid promotion at all. This is just, these are recommendations that I came up with through my own research. There is Nolo's Get It Together, Organize Your Records so your family won't have to. It's in its 9th edition. And this can be a helpful tool for tackling the paperwork aspect of planning for aging. Another one, the Harvard Medical School released a book called Aging in Place: How to Live at Home Safely and Independently for as Long as Possible. So if you're deciding to pursue that option of aging in place, this could be a helpful guide. And then Nolo's Long-Term Care: How to Plan and Pay for It, which is in its 13th edition. I think the biggest question that people tend to have is, what is this going to cost, right? And it's not an unfair question. Our financial resources are going to dictate, to a large extent, what we can realistically do as we're planning for aging. A few more literary resources. Planning for Aging, A Practical Guide, and Caring for an Older Adult, A Practical Guide. These are JourneyWorks publications. Oftentimes, Del Oro will provide these booklets at in-person educational events, but we do also have some pamphlets that are related to these topics on our website as well, if you want to check them out. All right, let's get into some online tools. Now, I understand that not everybody may feel comfortable with online tools and technology in general, but I do want to encourage you by highlighting a few that are easy to use and accessible and can really make it easier to get your affairs kind of in order. So as we're thinking about long-term planning, it might be hard to imagine all of the contingencies, right? At the beginning of this program, I mentioned that we may have a preference for one pathway. We may say, I want to age in place. In fact, most people do indicate that when surveyed do indicate that they want to age in place, they want to stay at home for as long as possible. But how does this plan change or evolve if something unexpected happens or if we develop a chronic condition? This tool called Plan Your Lifespan, which was developed by Northwestern University, is a really cool online tool that's interactive, and it can help you address all of these different considerations that come with aging and actually document what resources you currently have available and what resources you may need in the future, as well as starting to write down and record end of life plans. So I used this tool myself, and what it does is it captures that information, you input it, and it's secure to my knowledge. So nobody's and it doesn't ask for really personal information. Instead, it asks for things like, who would you call in the event of a hospitalization? Let's write down their name and their phone number and kind of have a running list. What's the plan for a fall? Do we want to go to a skilled nursing facility for rehabilitation and then come home? If we come home, who's available to support continued rehabilitation? Do we need to plan for in-home care? You input this information and you kind of think through different scenarios. And at the end of it, you have a printout of everything that you've captured, everything that you've planned for, essentially. So it's really a useful tool. It can be something that you can take with you to an attorney, an elder law or estate planning attorney, to kind of get that conversation started if you haven't already. Although this is not a legally binding document, the printout that results from using this tool, it's a helpful way to get started. All right, another resource. So aging in place really requires that we look around us and think about the spaces that we inhabit. As I mentioned before, many adults want to age in place. They want to stay in their homes as they get older, but there are some safety concerns about just doing everyday things. The National Institute on Aging, or NIH, which produced the video that we watched earlier in the program, cites that some of the common concerns about aging in place include mobility at home and transportation outside of the home, social isolation, safety and elder abuse, in particular, financial scamming and fraud among elders who have cognitive decline, concerns about caregiver support, what kind of respite is going to be available for a family or informal caregiver who is supporting a loved one with a long-term condition. We don't want that caregiver to burn out. And then home modifications. And so what the NIH, or National Institute on Aging, did was come up with a guide. So we're going to add this guide to our toolkit. We're going to put this in our Homer box and tuck it away. So some considerations that we have as we're planning to age in place might include looking around the home and removing area rugs that are tripping hazards, making sure that carpets are firmly affixed to the floor. We want to take stock of mobility within the bathroom. Falls within the bathroom are the most common, and so it may be incumbent upon us to install grab bars and to replace handles or faucets so that our loved ones are, especially those with experiencing cognitive decline, are more comfortable operating them. Reduce fall hazards, again, placing different no-slip strips or non-skid mats in areas where someone might potentially fall, placing light switches in accessible areas so that we're not navigating through the dark in our home, and installing ramps with handrails to the front door. A lot of homes don't have these ramps, and unfortunately, if for whatever reason we find ourselves or we're caring for someone and they find themselves having mobility issues, they need to use a wheelchair, it can be difficult to get in and out of the home without such a home modification. So the NIH offers some of these agencies, which we can also tuck into our toolkit, that help with home modifications and can give you more information too, can refer you outward to local programs. I did want to highlight one that's in our region, in the greater Sacramento area, that might be of interest. And for those living in the greater Sacramento area, this is another tool in your toolkit. It's a nonprofit agency called Rebuilding Together Sacramento. So Rebuilding Together Sacramento provides home improvement services and modifications that help vulnerable residents to live, and this is, I'm quoting their mission here, in safe, healthy, and efficient homes and neighborhoods. And the work is accomplished in collaboration with community partners, volunteers, contractors, and donors. So as we're talking about, aging in place and thinking about how to change the home to allow us to age in place, I'm sure there are concerns and questions about how can I do this? Like I'm not a contractor. How expensive is it going to be to make these changes to my home? Well, there are resources available to us, right? And we don't have to do a dramatic overhaul of the home to make it livable as we age in place. As the NIH suggests, there are small things that we can do to protect ourselves and ensure that we're safe and healthy. And there are agencies like Rebuilding Together Sacramento that, as nonprofits, can do some of this work for us. So really, really good to have in our back pockets, because it is expensive, or can get really expensive to make home improvements or modifications. Okay, we're still in our toolkit here. I hope I'm not moving too quickly. Again, if there's any questions, please make sure you pop those into the chat. We will have Q&A at the end, and Denise will be monitoring the chat so we can get around to your questions. One of the concerns that we highlighted earlier, if we go back for a moment to this slide here, one of the concerns that the NIH identified about aging in place was this fear of social isolation. Okay, so I'm not going to lie, social isolation is a challenge when, you know, during normal times. The pandemic probably exacerbated or worsened this condition for people living with chronic conditions and their caregivers. However, there are supports in place to ensure that there's, even if you cannot leave the comfort of your own home, there are places you can go to still experience community, to still get support, and to not be isolated within your home. If the goal is to age in place, we want to age well and happily and healthfully, and we can't necessarily do that even if we have all of the other safety concerns taken care of if we're isolated. So there is California Aging and Adult info line that has a number of different resources, but it also can connect you with hotlines wherein you can talk to someone. You can receive companionship over the phone. The California Aging and Adult Info Line is a referral service, so it's not just a place to go to call to get companionship, but that's one of the resources that they can refer out to if you needed support finding home modification services in your area. This would also be a good line to use. If you needed caregiver support, that was another concern that the NIH identified. You need to find resources for respite because there's a caregiver, your caregiver is in the home, they need support in supporting you. This would be a good line or to leverage. And what I've done here on the screen is to provide a couple of local phone numbers for this California Aging and Adult Info Line, county specific phone numbers, I should say. But again, the general number 1-800-510-2020 is a good one to use to get you where you need to go. I would also highly recommend looking into this Aging in California resource guide. The California Department of Aging has compiled this. Again, this is, rather than calling a hotline, this is a compilation of a number of different resources that are specifically geared toward supporting individuals who want to age in place and helping them to figure out what resources in the community they have available to them. It can help with information about the California Caregiver Resource Centers, such as Del Oro. It also has information about emergency preparedness. Depending upon where you live in the state, climate can have a big impact on your plan for aging. There's also information on volunteer opportunities for staying socially connected. So above and beyond hotlines that we can call, we also have these service opportunities. And then there's education about elder abuse too, what it looks like, what it means, what resources are available to prevent it. So it's a really great hub of information and is another great tool in your toolkit as you prepare to age in place. 211 is another tool in our toolkit. This free and confidential service helps people across the country to find the local resources that they need. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the United Way. And it serves people of all income levels, languages, cultural backgrounds. It's available to 96% of Californians and 85% of US households. So in fact, before I forget, California United Way in California operates and provides major funding to the 211 programs throughout the state, which is part of the reason why we have such good coverage. 211 plays a really critical role in providing information too during times of evacuation or of disaster, such as evacuation, shelter in place. It can offer suggestions for finding temporary shelter, food, medical and recovery information. And it also provides our public officials with feedback from callers about changing conditions on the ground. So it's a hub for resources on aging, and it's also a really great tool in the event of an emergency. In the video that we watched earlier, the Area Agency on Aging was mentioned, and I'm just going to highlight here our local area, our local agency on aging, which is Area 4, and it supports Nevada, Placer, Sacramento, Sierra, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba. Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center, the Alzheimer's Association, Senior Care Solutions, we support different catchment areas. But this particular area agency on aging happens to support many of the counties that for which we all provide services. I say all this to say that I'm not highlighting this at the exclusion of any other agencies on aging. They're very important because they offer, first of all, well, let me back up. First of all, they're funded by the federal government, and they provide a lot of different opportunities to support older adults and their families. So they're really important to be connected to if you're trying to age in place. Under the umbrella of the Area Agency on Aging, there's a Disability Resource Connection, what are called Aging and Disability Resource Centers, or ADRCs, that can help people to navigate the complexities of long-term services and supports and the community resources that are out there. There's caregiver support and respite through your agency on aging. A program called Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy, or HICAP, which is something that provides assistance with health insurance and long-term care insurance. There's legal services, there's information and referral about home improvement, home repairs, modifications, and then resources for transportation. So again, this is another kind of one-stop shop hub of resources that's going to be really helpful for thinking about how to age in place. Okay, it's time for another short video. And what we're going to do is we're going to go a different pathway. We've spent a lot of time looking at aging in place, and now we're going to explore the pathway of pursuing assisted living and facility-based care.
At some point, older adults who live at home may require services that go beyond what friends, family, and local programs can provide. That's when facility-based long-term care can play an important role. The most common types are nursing homes, where much of the focus is on medical care.
Nursing homes provide 24-hour housing, healthcare and personal services, supervision 24 hours a day, and most nursing homes also provide rehab services.
Many facilities provide several levels of care in one location. They are called continuing care communities. The Lincolnia facility in Northern Virginia provides both assisted living and independent living. Assisted living is housing that provides some supervision, as well as help with personal care, meals, and activities. It does not generally provide health care.
Assisted living, we help them with, tasks of daily living, be it taking their medicines or getting dressed, brushing their teeth. We prepare 3 hot meals a day, provide 2 snacks.
Assisted living residents usually live in their own apartments or rooms and share common areas.
Living quarters are all the same. as you see it here. We share bathroom, and we share the vase. We have our own bed. We have our own TV, our own radio, and our own privacy.
A typical day for someone in assisted living might go something like this.
Get up at the crack of dawn. Yeah. And we walk on down and get our medicine. Then we come down and have breakfast. Then I take my morning nap, which is until about 11 o'clock. Then I stay down here pretty much the rest of the day. We do activities.
Independent living at a continuing care facility is for people who can still live on their own and don't require the level of care provided in assisted living. Roberta has lived independently at Lincolnia for over 20 years.
I came here with my husband because my husband was diagnosed as having cancer, and I knew that as time went on, I was going to need help caring for him. So both of us agreed that the thing to do was enter a senior citizen home and sell our double-wide mobile home over in Chantilly. So that is what we did, and I've never been sorry.
Independent living allows our residents to live their life with freedom of choice, being able to prepare their own meals. They can set their own, design of living, whether it be a living room area with a sofa bed, or if they have their own bedroom set, their own furniture.
Those who live independently can still enjoy the activities and opportunities for companionship that a continuing care facility offers.
Sometimes I will eat here in my apartment. Sometimes I will go down to the dining room in the recreation center and have dinner there. And it's always nice to be able to sit down and chat with my neighbors. I really enjoy that a lot.
Social and recreational activities provide opportunities for people to interact with one another, which can help reduce isolation and loneliness.
You meet nice people here, and they take you to meet other people. That's nice.
Well, it keeps you from being lonely.
If you are considering a long-term care facility, a good rule of thumb is to first make sure the facility is licensed, and then pay a visit in person before you make a decision.
First off, to go to a facility and kind of just get a feel for what that facility is, and talk to people there, either to the administrative people, to staff, to get a sense of it. And also to talk with friends and family who've already had experience in long-term care. And that will help you make decisions and get information.
For more information about facility-based long-term care, contact the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or visit www.eldercare.gov. You can also contact your local area agency on aging.
Okay, for session 4, health impacts of the built environment. I'm looking forward to moderating this session.
I do apologize. Like sometimes with YouTube, it'll keep playing videos, and it looks like it went to the next one. But we're actually going to return to our toolkit now that we have watched this this video, again produced by NIH, about different assisted living and care setting options. One thing I'd like to highlight to begin with is this elder care locator that was mentioned at the end of the video. As mentioned, if you're planning to stay, if you're planning to live in assisted living as you age, or in a continuum of care setting, like I described before, that might have independent living, assisted living, and memory care all on one campus. The elder care locator is a really great resource for finding different care settings within your local area. And they have a phone number, but they also have an online search engine that's very easy to use. And I highly recommend this as a tool in the event that you're going in the direction of assisted living or continuum of care. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the costs involved with assisted living. Residential care homes for the elderly, or RCFEs, are, again, settings that can range in size. They can be small board and care homes, and they can be settings that serve hundreds of residents. And while they provide assistance with the activities of daily living, they are not going to provide that 24/7 medical care and supervision in a skilled nursing facility. So that's really important. There's a differential between these different spaces. There's a price differential between these different spaces. So for instance, in a large assisted living community, you might be able to find an apartment for a couple $1,000s a month. A few years ago, I think we were looking at maybe about $3,000 a month. I would venture a guess to say that it's probably more like $3,500 to $4,000 a month at this point, if not more. A small board and care setting, there's going to be price differentials depending upon the type of room that you would want to inhabit within that care setting. So if you had a shared room versus a private room is going to be more expensive. It's going to err on the side of, again, a couple $1,000s a month, 3,000 plus, versus a shared room, which might be anywhere from about 2,000 to 3,000 a month. And there might also be some community fees associated with these living situations too that you want to be mindful of, because they include amenities. I think you saw in the video that there was like a group exercise class happening. One of the benefits of living in assisted living in a continuum of care setting is these amenities that help with some of the concerns we talked about earlier, some of the concerns associated with aging in place. Things like, caregiver support and social isolation, home modifications. If you're in independent or assisted living, I should also include independent living, which is really sort of the most independent option that you have. You're not going to receive the same level of assistance that you would in assisted living, and certainly not that you would receive in memory care and so far. But in any residential care facility, there are these amenities, there's structured activities. So you're not necessarily having to plan for or account for some of the concerns that you would if you're aging in place. There is a lot of community in these spaces, and that can be something that's really important as people age. I want to highlight in the video that the woman who was interviewed mentioned that, as she and her husband were aging, his medical needs changed, hers didn't, but they wanted to stay together. And so having the option of living within a continuum of care setting meant that her husband could get the assistance he needed. They could stay together, and she could ostensibly plan for any changes in her own health as well. She'd have access to these resources if her health needs changed. She recognized that she alone wasn't going to be able to support her husband at home. So this was a way of addressing some of the concerns that come up when we plan for aging and we plan to age in place. Again, I want to underscore this is not an explicit endorsement for continuum of care or assisted living, but rather I'm trying to give you a sense of some of the advantages to both pathways. In the video, they mentioned that residential care facilities for the elderly are CFEs. They're licensed and they're also regulated. In California, they'd be regulated by the state of California, specifically the Department of Social Services Home Care Services Bureau. And so if there are any issues, there's also recourse. And when I say issues, if there are any problems with the services associated with assisted living and care, there is recourse to get support, to file complaints as needed. If there's any suspicion of abuse, for instance, that's something that these agencies would like to know, and that will be followed up on at the state level. Okay, we're coming to the end of our time together today, and it seems fitting to end with thinking about legal and end of life matters. Again, this is not a comfortable subject. This is not a fun subject, but it's very important. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, just from the vantage point of a caregiver or family member, it's such a gift to know what your loved one wants at the end of their life, what they do and do not want to have happen to them, what they do and do not want to have happen to them as their medical needs may change. So we have a couple of different categories to think about under this larger umbrella of end of life matters. First, we have advanced directives for medical care. We know that our health needs are going to change as we age. And so as we're planning, it's important for us to have in writing what we want from our medical care. A living will is one form of advanced directive that wherein you can expressly state your preferences, your expectations for medical care. Durable power of attorney for healthcare is where you designate someone to act, a family member, a friend to act on your behalf in the event that you cannot speak for yourself. They are aware of your preferences, your expectations for medical care, and can act as a proxy. Both the living will, the durable power of attorney for healthcare, most likely need to be notarized by a notary or discussed with an attorney. However, there's something called a POST form, which is it stands for Physician's Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. It is the easiest advance directive to prepare and to share with your physician, and it outlines very clearly. Usually comes in the form of a pink handout. It outlines very clearly what you would like to have happen in the event that you're incapacitated. Do you want life-sustaining treatment? Do you want a feeding tube? Do you want certain procedures done to ensure that you stay alive if for instance, you stopped breathing for a certain stretch of time? So it's a way for you to clearly communicate this to your physicians. Now, in the past, people have put this big pink form up on their refrigerator. So if emergency personnel come into the home, they know to look there and they can see that form, take it with them. They know how to respond so that nothing's happening to you that you don't want to have happen. So I would say that probably one of the most important steps to take regarding end of life matters is to prepare an advanced directive. I had a student once who said, Ms. Nizal, nothing's promised, right? Which was strange to hear from an adolescent, this wisdom, but tomorrow's not promised. And he's absolutely correct. And so it's good for us to have in writing what our wishes are with regards to our medical care. With financial and legal plans, many of you may already know that it's important to have in writing how you want your assets to be distributed upon death, and who you want to act in your stead as a proxy to ensure that your assets are distributed the way that you would like if you are incapacitated. And so power of attorney, notice this is not power of attorney for healthcare. This would be a different form of power of attorney. There are different options for this. There's limited, there's general, and then there's durable. So you have the option of determining what extent you want to give a representative, family member, a friend, what extent you want to give them the power to act on your behalf with regards to your assets. Many people know about wills. Wills are still an option for recording how you want your assets to be divided upon death. But I do want to underscore that there is this thing called probate that's associated with wills, and essentially upon the death of an individual who has a will, their stuff goes through the courts before it is divvied up, and sometimes that can involve lawyers and legal fees, and it can diminish the assets before they are reallocated. And so many people have now sort of moved toward this living trust as a way of transferring assets because it avoids probate. So these are important decisions, again, to make now. When I was caregiving for my mom, I had no idea what any of this stuff was, like no idea. And I didn't really even want to think about it, but it was so important for she and I to have that conversation. For me as her caregiver, for her as a person living with cancer, to be forthcoming about what I want it to look like, so that is not a stressor or a worry at a critical time in our health journey, in our caregiving journey. Finally, I just want to highlight that as we plan to age, we also want to think about, what the end of life is going to look like for us, specifically in that, what do we want to have happen to us after we pass away? Is our preference to have a funeral, a cremation, some other form of honoring our bodies? What do we want that to look like? And to, again, have that written down, communicated with friends and family, especially those who are acting on your behalf. So I'm gonna wrap up here with a couple of tools for you for thinking about end of life matters, and then I'll take questions. But I know that this is probably the least comfortable part of planning for aging, thinking about our own mortality, but it's so crucial. And I will say that I've had reflected back to me, people who do this, not only are they giving a gift to their loved ones, but it also gives them peace of mind too. They may have no control over their disease progression, and they may feel like they have little control over anything that's happening to them, but this is an area where they have some control, they have some say. And I think it's really important. For increasing our well-being, even in the face of health issues that are not reversible. We do have control of things. We can make a plan. So again, tools for your toolkit. The first is a document that is quite popular and very easy to fill out and to start thinking about end of life issues. It's called the 5 Wishes form, and it's very gentle in the way that it approaches end of life. It really just allows you in ways similar to the Plan Your Lifespan tool that I showed you earlier. 5 Wishes allows you to sketch out how you want, what you want your end of life to look like, who you want involved, who you want to act on your behalf in the case of incapacity. And it has you write it down, right? And what's great about this document is that it can be notarized and it can become a legally binding document. So whereas the Plan Your Lifespan tool is not a legally binding document, it's simply a tool for planning, 5 Wishes, if it's witnessed or notarized, can act as a legal document. I also encourage you to have a family meeting. And family, I use this term broadly. This can include friends, this can include neighbors, anyone that you call family. It doesn't have to just be blood relatives, but actually sitting down and having a conversation with your loved ones now rather than later. It's never too early to get started, and expressing clearly what your wishes are for end of life. And then finally, talking with an attorney. It's really important to have that conversation with an attorney. And what's nice, if you have already filled out a 5 Wishes form or you have a family meeting, can save you a little money because you're not starting from the very beginning with an attorney. It does cost some money to work with a lawyer for legally binding end of life plans. But if you have everything written down and consolidated, it's going to make that work a lot easier and go a lot more quickly. So with that, I'm going to conclude our Planning for Aging program. Thank you for your time today.
Denise Davis with the Alzheimer's Association, and we support families here locally, regionally, and also nationally. Our organization's been around for the last 30 plus years. When facing Alzheimer's disease or another dementia, we know there are a lot of things to consider, and our first program here, Alzheimer's Navigator, helps guide caregivers to answers by creating a personalized action plan and linking you to information, support, and local resources. Our community resource finder can help you find resources in your area, home care agencies, adult day programs, residential care, medical care, etc. We also have respite services and our Trial Match clinical studies trial program. Join other caregivers and people living with Alzheimer's to share concerns and advice online form at ALS Connected. And as care partners, you likely have many responsibilities, and it's important to take care of your own well-being and connect with others that understand. Safety is also very important, but the need for a comprehensive safety plan becomes vital as dementia progresses. Taking measures to improve safety can prevent injuries and help the person with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia feel more relaxed, less overwhelmed, and maintain their independence longer. The Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline at 800-272-3900 is available around the clock every day of the year. This service is free, and specialists and master's level clinicians offer confidential support and information to people living with the disease, caregivers, family, and the public. You can speak to master's level care consultants for decision-making. We also provide caregiver support groups right now that are live on Zoom or over the phone. We also provide early stage support for persons with a diagnosis and education and peer-to-peer counseling. We have some social engagement programs such as museum tours that were once in person and now are virtually they are still engaging with the person with the dementia diagnosis. And lastly, we do provide multilingual education and support, including Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and more.
Oro Caregiver Resource Center is one of 11 CRCs across the state of California, and our mission is to improve the well-being of family caregivers and provide support throughout the caregiving process. We happen to serve California's gold country counties, which are listed on the screen. And essentially, our job is to focus on the family caregiver and provide supports that allow that family caregiver to continue to care for their loved one in a sustainable manner. We offer things like information and referral, support groups, and education and training like TDIS program. But if you are a full-fledged client, we can also offer family consultation and sometimes case management, respite care, so offering access to professional caregivers or adult day programs to give the caregiver a break, counseling for a short-term basis, and legal consultation. All of these services are free. While information and referral, support groups, and education and training are open to the public, family consultation, respite, counseling, and legal consultation are services we reserve for clients. So if you're interested in getting started with us and becoming a client, please give us a call with the number on the screen, 916-728-9333. You can also look us up online. Thank you.
Senior Care Solutions has been in the greater Sacramento area for the last 25 years. We are located physically in Fair Oaks and can be reached on the phone number on our screen, 965-5565, as well as online, www.seniorcs.com. We do in-depth client intakes and assessments. Our services are free to families. We provide care options for clients and resources that we feel are necessary and involved along your journey in our community. We connect you with caregiver workshops and also run a couple of support groups ourselves, specifically for men. And we welcome your call to see how we can help you.